What is going on? How y'all guys doing? I'm coming into you live with another edition of Joel's Crime Stories. If it's your first time tuning in to this great broadcast, do me a favor. Go ahead on and hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell all the way up to the top. So that way, whenever I come on with the most realest information in the game possible, you are aware of what's going on. Now, tonight's broadcast, we're going to be talking about one of the most legendary, most infamous, most realest gangsters of the 20th century. That's right. When I say one of the realest, this guy is a legend. He's a legend for a lot of reasons. In fact, before there was a Frank Lucas, there was this guy right here. And believe me, he played the role and he played that role good. All the way up until it was time for him to walk away from the game. But he did it in his own terms. A lot of terms not a lot of people are going to agree with, but he did it his way. So we're not here to judge. I'm here to give you a story. Now, tonight is about a man named Leroy Nicholas Barnes, who was a crime boss who ruled with an iron fist in the 1970s. Now, he went by Nicky Barnes. And no, he wasn't one of those guys that was from another part of the country who migrated to New York and did his thing. He is an actual New Yorker from the ground up, actually, originally from Harlem. And we are going to go into the rise and the actual fall of Nicky Barnes. Leroy Nicholas Barnes was born on October the 15th in 1933 in Harlem, New York City. He was born to your black, common black family back then in those times. Now, he was a good student in his youth, but he left home early to escape an abusive alcoholic father. Now, the story is that one time Nicky saw that his father was being abusive to his mother, and Nicky stood up to his father that he said in interviews. And when he did, and he basically, went toe to toe with his dad, got the best of his dad, knocked his dad down. And he knew right then there was a point of no return of not going back. Couldn't go back to the home. So he started staying with friends. And that's when his life of crime began to get interesting. He started turning to drug dealer for income. Now, Barnes himself became addicted to heroin. Heroin back then was a very addictive drug. Okay, a lot of people were strung out on heroin, especially in the late 40s and in the 50s. Because back then, a lot of people, especially a lot of black people in poverty-stricken areas of the U.S., was dealing with a lot of emotional distress, a lot of demons. Now, for several years in his 20s, he was spending some time in jail when he ended his addiction. Now, Barnes was sent to prison in 1965 for a low level drug dealing. And while in prison, he met Crazy Joe Gallo. Now, he said, now, back then, Crazy Joe Gallo, when he went to prisons, black people only stuck with black people. Spanish people and Italians and whites, they all stuck together in prison. But if you were black, you stuck on your own, right? Well, when he got in the prison and he knew Gallo from the streets, what he said in his interview, him and Gallo just clicked. And Crazy Joe liked it. So Crazy, aka Joe Gallo, was a member of the Colombo crime family. And Matthew Madonna, a heroin dealer, was from the Lucchese family. Now let's talk about uh, Matthew Madonna. Matthew Madonna was also a white Italian. He was also in jail too. He knew Nicky from the streets. So it was like, all right, a lot of people looked at them weird because they got along together and nobody couldn't understand it. But back then, if you was a made man and Matthew Madonna was a one of those was a made man, if I'm not mistaken, nobody wasn't going to tell him what he couldn't or couldn't do while he was in that prison, who he could hang with. So, with that being said, that made Nicky Barnes a rare unicorn, so to speak. Now, Gallo wanted to have a greater presence in Harlem heroin market, but he did not have any personnel to deal in the predominantly African American areas. And I know you're probably going to ask what that meant. That meant back then, even in New York, black people from the hood did not trust white people in their hood selling them drugs. There was even stories of them getting mashed out. That's right. Even back then in New York City, they didn't play that. If you wasn't a part of that neighborhood or you wasn't a part of that culture, they wasn't just gonna let you come in and deal drugs. So that's what was the problem. They knew that it was a market there, but they just had to figure out a way of how to make the money. So with that being said, Gallo passed on knowledge on how to run a drug trafficking organization to Barnes and asked him to assemble the necessary personnel. Also, what was told that Matthew Madonna also helped teach uh, Nicky Barnes the way of how organized crime worked, like the mob worked. So he basically got game from both guys who were in organized crime and gave him the structure of this is what you got to have to make things work. Now, a lot of people said that the way that Nicky Barnes went along to do this was going to mess him up in the long run and said that it wasn't going to work. But actually, the way that Nicky Barnes sought this up from the knowledge of them made him so hard to touch in the 70s. Because while everybody else was trying to be the front man or the front man behind closed doors, he was going to do it a little different. And I'm about to get more into that in a second. So when Gallo was released from jail, he provided a lawyer for Barnes, who subsequently had his conviction overturned on a technicality. On his return to New York City, Barnes began to assemble his personnel and begin cutting the packaging heroin. Now, if you know in my title, I got hashtag the council. Well, this is where it all started. In 1972, to deal more effectively with other black gangsters in Harlem, Barnes formed the Council. It was a 7-man organization. This consists of Nicky Barnes being the leader. Then you had Joseph Jazz Hayden, Wallace Rice, Thomas Gaps Foreman, Ishmael Muhammad, who was like their spiritual guidance guy, Frank James, and Guy Fisher. Now, Guy Fisher, if you hear about this, this is also another legend in the New York scene when it came to gangster activity in the 1970s. Guy was one of the youngest guys in the council. And the reason why he got picked up and became the right hand man of Nicky Barnes because he was very charismatic. He was hungry to learn the game. Okay. So Nicky looked at him as that long lost son I could take under my wing and train how to be a thoroughbred in these streets. But later, he's going to find out that sometimes idols can become your rivals. But that's another story. Now, the council was modeled after the Italian American mafia family, where it settled disputes among the criminals and handled distribution problems and other drug trade related issues. Now, it was also said that during this time, Nicky Barnes never was seen hardly ever touching the product. He had them handle everything. He was like the CEO slash supervisor. He made sure the deals was good. He made sure that things were delivered on time. But being around it, like being attached to it, he was very smart, trying to make sure he distanced himself as much as possible. He was running this thing like a CEO, man. Damn, man, that's talent. Now, by 1976, Barnes' operation spread throughout all of New York State and into Pennsylvania and Canada, according to the DEA records. Barnes' operation in 1976 consisted of 7 lieutenants who even controlled a dozen mid-level distributors who in turn supplied upwards of 40 street level dealers each. So think about that. 7 times 40, he had 280 street level people on his payroll. His other lieutenants had people that was next to them, right hand men that was handling situations so they wouldn't get their hands dirty. Everybody knew their role, man. Like it was nobody wasn't trying to be the head man. Everybody was just trying to eat and live by the code, right? Now, Barnes set up front companies to protect some of his assets, such as numerous car dealerships, which appear to be rented through those companies. The DEA eventually discovered the true ownership of the companies and seized the cars, including a Bentley, a Citroen SM, a Maserati, a Mercedes Benz, a yellow Volvo, and several Cadillac Lincoln Continentals, and Ford Thunderbirds. Imagine that. Even back in the 70s, a black man having more than one dealership. That's crazy, right? Remember? But we always screaming that we oppressed. Even in those oppressed times, they were balling, man. He was making it work. Now, Barnes' net worth had reached over 50 million at the height of his career. But what I was told in interviews, he has said he made way more than that. He was saying that he was selling drugs so much at one point that they were raking in about $40 million a month. So I think he was a little bit more worth than that. I think old boy was probably worth a couple of hundred mil. But hey, who's counting? Because even back then, they were making so much money that the feds have even a contest that they couldn't even keep up with counting the money. Now, a New York Times article estimated that Barnes purchased hundreds of tailor-made suits, Italian shoes, coats, and jewelry, which alone was valued at over $7 million. Now, I'm about to blow y'all mind about this man's wardrobe. Since we're speaking of this, Nicky Barnes had a rule for everybody that was in the council and himself: never buy off the rack. Have it tailor made. Never buy off the rack. That was his thing. It was like, nah, I'm not buying this off the rack. I want it to be specially made for me in a special way. So Nicky Barnes always made sure that he was tailor made and his guys was tailor made. That's just how he did it. That's just how he ran his style. That's what made him a little bit more interesting than most people. During this time, Barnes had become a dominant drug lord in Harlem and was given the name Mr. Untouchable after successfully beating numerous charges and arrests. It is believed while under surveillance, Barnes would often make pointless stops and go on high-speed chases with little purpose other than to aggravate those following him. The council also employed contract killers such as Robert Young, aka Willie Sanchez. Also, too, the note that wasn't put in this information that I'm reading out to y'all in my notes. Nicky Barnes had a major taste for the ladies. Okay, when I say a major taste for the ladies, Nicky Barnes was married, and not only was he married, he also had a girlfriend. So his girlfriend was his boo. Like she was younger than he was. I think she was like 20 years younger than this cat, but he was in love with this girl. Like this was that was his lady. That was his boo, you know what I mean? Now, he also provided the guys that was in on his level too. He hooked them up with some of these girls. A lot of these girls were friends of his women. Not to mention, too, he also loved to throw parties. He was the life of the party. He was one of the most flamboyant, most outspoken, straight to the point drug dealers of all time. That what made him different than most of these cats in the game in the 70s. A lot of people were trying to be low key or they were flamboyant, but they didn't know how to be flamboyant enough to be interested. Not Nicky Barnes. He was there. But on June 5th, 1977, the New York Times Magazine released an article titled Mr. Untouchable. And oh, yeah, I got so into this story, I forgot to show you that part. Oh, hello, hello. I don't know why that happened. My bad, guys. I thought I had clicked off. Anyway, this is Mr. Untouchable. Now, this right here was the article that really got my man's caught up. When I say they got him caught up, it got him really caught up. He released this on Times Magazine, and everybody was like, "Oh, so this is the man that did it, that think he cannot be touched." Now, I'm going to tell you what was the reason behind this magazine. Now, he wanted to pose in this magazine to let everyone to understand that he was living the American dream. He did this on time. Now, why he wanted to have the blue suit and the red and white on tie. He wanted everybody to say, "Hey, he's just a CEO. He's just a guy that's like us." But what he did was he agitated the people that was building the case on him. He basically made them think in their head that they would never catch him. He was not going down without a fight, and that he felt like he was untouchable. So when that happened and everything else, that's when the president at that time, Jimmy Carter, that the and he ordered the United States Attorney General Griffin Bell to prosecute Barnes to the fullest extent of the law. And legend has it that he told them that if they lost that case, the people that was working on the case, they weren't gonna have a job. So the Department prosecuted Barnes for his drug-related crimes, and let me tell you how they pulled this off. They decided that this time they were going to have jury selection where he could not see the jury. Usually, when he went to trial, he would see the jury. He knew what the jury was. He knew the people faces, and he actually got people in his team to locate these folks and put the fear of God in them, or in a lot of cases, make them disappear. But usually, put the fear of God in them, and because of that, he would always get off because everybody know if we don't vote this cat off, we gonna die. This time they did it different. They did what you call a closed door jury, the first ever in the history of the U.S. of A. And I think after he was the only case that had that done. Even the mob didn't even have that done when they had the case against the Teflon Don when it came to uh, my man Gotti. They went, got 12 of these jurors. They didn't even tell the lawyers what race they were, because most of the time these jurors that they picked out were black. There were no white jurors. They picked out a diverse setting of jurors. It was up behind closed doors. Nobody didn't know who they were. Now, when he did went to try, his right hand man didn't get convicted. He got off. Guy Fisher. Legend has it that Fisher got off because Guy, some kind of way, was charismatic enough to find out who was one of the jurors in this closed door, uh, in this closed door setting. And they said it was rumored that he allegedly paid that juror $100,000 not to convict him. Man, it's a lot of money. 100 grand, it's a lot of money. For real. But anyway, Nicky Barnes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on January the 19th, 1978. Now, the prosecutor in that case was Robert B. Fisk, then the United States Attorney General for the Southern District of New York. So now let's talk about the prison episodes. According to Barnes, while in prison, he discovered that assets were not being maintained and that the council had stopped paying his attorney. Damn. Attorney fees. Barnes discovered that one of his fellow council members, the man that he mentored, like his son, the guy who he taught the game to, his that used to look at him as an idol, Guy Fisher, was having an affair with Barnes' mistress. Now, the council had a very strict code of conduct. You could do whatever you want with whatever lady you had in your life, but you do not touch each other's women, including mistresses. That was off limits. Don't touch them. That was the code. That was the code. They said treat your brother like you treat yourself. But unfortunately, that's not what God thought at the time. God was like, you out of here, I'm in. Now, at first, Barnes tried to get a hit out on Guy Fisher. But unfortunately, the council was under control of Guy. Guy was that dude now. He was the one that was calling the shots. So they wasn't going to assassinate him. So Nicky thought about this for some time and said, you know what? I know how to get all y'all. I'm just going to go and tell the FBI how the whole organization worked from the inside out. And that's exactly what he did. This is where his legacy gets a little gray here. He forwarded a list of 109 names. 5 of them was the council members, along with his wife's name, implicating them all in illegal activities. Now, it was also told that his wife was also cheating on him with one of the other council members as well. Now, it wasn't Guy Fisher. They said it was one of the other guys out of the council group. I want to say it was maybe Ishmael, but she was also having her affair and getting her rocks off with one of those guys too. So imagine that you in jail, they supposed to be taking care of you. They stop paying your bills and they spending all your money up, driving your cars and messing with both of your women. Cold game, ain't it? Now, after he forwarded the list of 100 names and the 5 council members, along with his wife, he implicated all of them in illegal activities related to the heroin trade. He indicted 44 other traffickers, 16 of whom were ultimately convicted. In his testimony, he implicated himself in 8 murders. While in prison, he also won a national poetry contest for federal inmates, earned a college diploma with honors, and taught fellow inmates in English. Now, this is where it gets kind of crazy. Now, back in the 80s, I think about 84 through 87, Nicky Barnes was actually advocating to get released from prison since he had cooperated with the government. Now, a lot of people wasn't feeling his advocacy because everybody was looking at him like a traitor, especially the people that were real big fans of Guy Fisher because they were like, that was your right hand man. You gonna let women get in between y'all for you to go and rat on him like this? Like, really? But at the same time, I could see the principle where he was going with this. So after Barnes cooperated with the government by working as an informant, Rudy Giuliani saw the reversal of Barnes' life sentence. Eventually, Barnes was re-sentenced to 35 years, but by working in jail, he earned 2 months off his sentence, and he was released in August of 1998. In 2007, Barnes and his former competitor Frank Lucas shot down with the New York magazine Mark Jacobson. I'm gonna try to put the link on that on below so y'all can see that interview. And they had a conversation and they had spoken to each other in like 30 years. Now a lot of people try to point the picture that Frank Lucas, which I'll do a story on very soon, don't know when in these series, and Nicky Barnes didn't get along. But that was totally opposite. They actually respect each other's hustle, and they were actually good, not only competitors, but they were good friends. They respected each other's area. In fact, you know, uh, it was Frank Lucas had always said that he looked at Nicky like a brother. You know, he respected Nicky's grind. Now I know in the movie they made it look like that Blue Magic was being taken away from was being imposed or being taken away by my man Nicky Barnes. But Nicky Barnes said in that conversation that basically, yeah, Frank had a good product. Yeah, Frank was all had a natural product that wasn't hardly stepped on or cut too many times. But Nicky said what made his product more unique is he was able to to have his product just not as good as Frank's own, but was good enough to not only take care of these addicts high, but also to be distributed on all boroughs of New York. He was in all boroughs and Canada. So he had a more complex distribution route and he knew how to work it. Now, Barnes became part of the United States Federal Witness Protection Program. Now, if you don't know what that program is, it's a program that the U.S. puts people in high profile cases. And it don't even have to be a high profile case. It could be just because you did, you was around a group of people that are still dangerous to this day and can find you. Now, once you get into that protection program, you get a new name, you get a new social security number, you get brief. A lot of times you may not be able to put your family in it. You might be the only one, but usually they try to put your immediate family in the program with you, but y'all have to forget about your old life. That means you can't go on Facebook and be like, yo, man, I'm in the program now. Just my new name. Holla at your boy. Not none of that. And if you do talk to family members and stuff, there's been rumored that I've heard you got to use a special phone that's given to them, that's given to you by them. You have to talk to them, get that special phone, and call. And even when you call the family that you left behind, you can't tell them nowhere where you at. They can't come see you. They can't nothing. It's phone call and that's it. Crazy, ain't it? I don't want that lifestyle. I take my chances. But anyway, he also wrote a memoir, Mr. Untouchable by Crimes and Punishment, which was published in 2007. He also appeared in the documentary about his gang life titled Mr. Untouchable. On January 31st, 2008, Howard Stern interviewed Barnes on Stern's on Sirius satellite radio show. Now, a lot of people want to know how is he able to do all these interviews? Well, he was able to do it because, like he always told everybody, he has to clear everything through the witness protection program. And they have to set everything up to where he cannot be traced and nobody cannot know where he's at. Now, Barnes died from cancer on June 18th, 2012. However, because he was under witness protection, his death was not contemporaneously reported under his birth name, and news of his death only became known in June of 2019. Now, this is what's crazy. When he died, right? This is what's nuts. There's a urban legend, I don't know how true it was, that Nicky Barnes had changed his name. He lived somewhere in Midwestern United States of America, and that he was working at a local Walmart, like literally at a local Walmart. I don't know what his job was over there, but that's what he was. He worked there for years when he first got released, basically, what they said. So imagine that. Imagine that somebody could possibly been working around one of the biggest gangsters of all time. That's pretty impressive. But that's what they said. Now, his children are still under witness protection. Even after these years, you're probably like, man, that's crazy. Well, when you do something that major, people still got a grudge, so you never know. Even their family may have a grudge. But yeah, that is the life and times of Nicky Barnes, aka Mr. Untouchable. Tell me if you like this story, go ahead on and hit the like button, hit the notification bell up top, and after you hit that subscribe button. Also, to my other platforms, follow me as well. I'm gonna leave my email below or in the comment section. Suggest to me what other crime story should I do? I mean, which one is interested? It could be even one local for you. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments. I'll look into it and I'll figure it out. Thank y'all so much for your time. Love y'all guys. Be safe. Be careful. I'm out.